Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Cady, and today I'm gonna do something a little bit different. So I most of the time talk about real estate and houses and Zillow and all of these fun things that are in the real estate market. But a couple of months ago, I was out to dinner with one of my good friends. His name is Andrew Leffler. He's also an agent with Compass. And we were talking about, over bourbon, we were talking about the differences of bourbon and whiskey and all of these things. And I realized, after talking to him, he lives right inside this house in Dunwoody, how little I knew about bourbon and the aging of it and barrel and whiskey and scotch and all that. And so what I've decided to do today is introduce you to, let's call him the Bourbon Whisperer. His name is Andrew Leffler. He lives inside the house. He's got 500 bottles of scotch and bourbon and whiskey in the house. So we're gonna go through and we're gonna do a little tutorial on bourbon and whiskey and all that stuff. So follow me up the stairs. Let's talk to Andrew Leffler. Come on. Didn't even have to knock.
Hey guys, Andrew Leffler here with Compass. You guys must be here for bourbon tasting, bourbon school. Come on inside the house.
I think we are. This is the Bourbon Whisperer. Come inside. We're going to show you what's going on. All right, guys, we're here in the kitchen, and Andrew and I are both real estate agents with Compass. And, you know, I'm fortunate to have friends like Andrew because when you are out at restaurants and you know nothing or very little about the bourbon process, or so I found out, it's just amazing to have guys like Andrew. So again, I do a lot of videos about real estate, but I wanted to totally change it up today because Andrew and I were at a bar at Avalon.
Branch and Barrel.
Branch and Barrel a couple months ago, and I had ordered just a little bourbon. I thought, you know, the bourbon I like. And he starts having this conversation with the bartender, and it's like, how do you know these things? Like, how do you know the age strength and the barrel strength and the difference and all that? So what I thought I'd do is just spend, I don't know how long it's gonna take, but we would just start going through the difference of what is bourbon, what is whiskey, what is scotch, because I don't wanna admit this, but I don't know, and this guy does. So take it away, man.
Great, yeah, happy to help. Thanks for coming today. I think the easiest way to start is to recognize the differences. All bourbon is whiskey, not all whiskey is bourbon. Right. Here in front of us, you got a couple different options. Bourbon, this one's Elijah Craig. We don't really know where bourbon came from. Most people think that Elijah Craig
right, because that's the rumor. That's the rumor that he's the founder of bourbon.
That's what they say. He's a Baptist minister, and that he was trying to age his whiskey in something to make it taste better. He was using old pickle barrels, and it ended up tasting delicious.
Because whiskey's been around forever, but bourbon is an American thing from what I've learned.
Yeah, right? That's exactly right. And it was a great way to store corn over the winter. We grew all this corn back in the olden days, before whiskey and bourbon, before America. They would have to give any extra corn that they made to the king. Now, it's America, what do we do with our extra food? They didn't have refrigerators back then. They would turn it into liquor. So that was calories for the winter.
So basically bourbon was birthed, and doesn't it have to pass some criteria to be bourbon?
That's right, yeah. There's 6 tests, right? First, A, it has to be made in America.
Okay.
B, it has to be aged in a brand new barrel, an oak barrel specifically. C, it has to be 51% corn or more in the mash bill.
All right, so before you go on, who knew that in order for it to be bourbon, it had to be 51% corn? I didn't.
A lot of people think it has to be made in Kentucky, but that's not true. You can make bourbon right here in Atlanta.
Right.
You can't make it outside the United States though, and as a matter of fact, that's what Scotch means, is this was aged for at least 3 years in Scotland. That's whiskey aged in Scotland in a barrel. That's what Scotch is. And that's kind of why it has that mossy, peaty flavor versus bourbon, which is sweeter. It's because the wood that they use from the trees in Scotland have a different texture. Oak has a very different flavor, and that's why bourbon is sweet.
I get it. So basically, whiskey has been around forever. Whiskey is like the term, right? Bourbon was an American thing. This came from Scotland, and what is this?
Japanese whiskey. So this is called Nikka, whiskey from the barrel. And Japanese whiskey is very similar to Scotch. It's got that peaty, mossy flavor. If you like Scotch, you'll also like Japanese whiskey.
So a lot of people that are gonna watch this, I've got a lot of friends and clients that we love to sip on bourbon together. And I just love knowledge. I love learning about things. And again, this video came together when I realized that I didn't know what I was talking about. I just usually go order Buffalo Trace or something. And don't get me wrong, like,
great bourbon.
I love Buffalo Trace, but there is a difference between whiskey and bourbon and Scotch and Japanese whiskey. So I just wanted to start talking about this process. But the real fun, and I think where we're gonna get in depth in the next few minutes, is we're gonna go down to the basement and we're gonna show his collection, because one of the reasons I wanted to bring Andrew in is because it's not just the 4 bottles. Obviously, this is the difference. This guy has a serious collection. And again, when we go out together, his knowledge of bourbon is great. And so we're hoping to bring a video that, you know, and some people watching this, you're gonna be like, yep, I know it. Yep, I know this. Yep, I know this. But some people might not. So how about we go to the basement, or do you want to talk about the cups?
Yeah. I mean, the big difference between a problem and a hobby is writing it down. So when you think about,
I love that.
when you think about bourbon tasting,
right?
The point is not just to drink as much bourbon as you can, right? There's really 3 things that you want. You want to have the nose, which is how it smells. the taste, which is when it touches your tongue, and the finish, and that's when you swallow it. And so when you're having a lot of fun, you're sitting with your buddies, you want to try some new things, my advice is to try something called the blind test, where you have somebody else pour your bourbon, you taste it, you write down your notes, and then afterwards you find out what you drank. That way you're not influenced by the buzzwords like Happy and Weller, which of course are great, but overpriced, let's be honest, at $2,000 a bottle. There's $29 bottles that, frankly, if you don't really know, you're gonna be really happy with.
So that whole taste thing, is that kind of how you got into this collection?
Yeah, for sure. You start drinking and you find out what you like. And there's different mash bills and different combinations of the bottles and the age statements, etc. And then you find your statement. The other thing is there's no wrong way to drink bourbon. If you want to mix it with Coke, it's not gonna hurt my feelings. You can put ice on it, it's Georgia, it's hot. It's okay. If you want an ice to drink, that's fine with me.
Totally.
You know, the purists will say you want to drink it the same way that the tasters drink it while they're at the distillery. And that's why you want it straight out of the barrel with your Glencairn glass. But you can use a tumbler, you can use a rocks glass. This is what I normally drink out of, but Glencairn is perfect for when you want to do your tasting.
So Andrew's obviously very sophisticated in his bourbon, whiskey, Scotch, and Japanese whiskey. So I think we take a break and we go down to the basement and let's have a little bit more in-depth conversation about basically his collection and how he got them, what it costs, what the bottles are worth, and all that stuff. So
I don't know the answer to one of those.
Let's go to the basement, we'll have fun.
All right, so we're down here in the basement bar. Pride and joy of the house, obviously something I'm very passionate about. But I love entertaining, I love having friends over, and I certainly love helping people learn more about bourbon. One of the things that I wanted to talk about real quickly before we talk about some specific bottles that I have lined up behind you guys is the color. Where does the color come from, right? It's actually clear, and when it's sitting in the barrel, that's where it gets the color from. The longer it's in the barrel, typically the darker the color. The other piece to it is a lot of people think bourbon is just, it's too hot, it's too much proof, there's too much alcohol. That's not necessarily always true. Bourbon can start at 80 proof and go up from there. One thing that you'll see that will kind of help you know if you're looking at a really high proof bourbon is it'll say something like barrel proof or barrel strength, cask strength. And the higher the alcohol content and the higher the proof, that's where you'll get those kind of like clues and hints. So let's flip over here to the table and let's talk a little bit about some of the other bottles.
All right, we're going to attempt to end this video. We can honestly talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours about bourbon. But what Andrew wanted to do here is bring some specific bottles to talk about some of the differences.
Yeah.
I'm not qualified to have this conversation. All I'm doing is hoping to shed some light on the differences of bourbon because it's so vast, right? Yeah. So what do we want to talk about?
All right, so the point of this, bring some bottles out for you to know. Next time you're in the liquor store, if you're looking for a gift, if you're looking for something new to try, if you just want to get into it, I can help give you maybe a little bit of clarification on
that's helpful.
What's a really good thing for
I've been there before. Like, what do I buy?
A lot of people say, I get this text message all the time. I've got $50 to spend on a bourbon, what should I buy? And I'll send them a list of 10 bottles, right? It's tricky. If you go into the store and you try to buy Buffalo Trace Antique Collection stuff, it's limited distribution. They only make one barrel a year.
I've heard that.
That liquor store owner's not gonna sell it to you unless you've spent several $1,000s with them. And the relationship you have is absolutely going to dictate whether you're able to buy those bottles or not. The other ones who have them sitting on the top shelf, they're asking thousands of dollars for those bottles a lot of the time. And if you're willing to pay for it, they're willing to sell it to you, but maybe that's not the best way to do it.
Okay, so before you go into this, I need to ask you a question. Everyone says Blantons. And everyone, I know it's got a real sexy cup and everything, but tell me the story behind Blantons.
Yeah, Blanton's is named after General Blanton's U.S. Army, and he was actually an employee there at Buffalo Trace. He was partly responsible for Bottle and Bond Act and for getting us through Prohibition as well.
But wait, but Blanton's is owned by Buffalo Trace.
Yeah, it's the same company. Sazerac owns 350 different brands, including Pappy, Weller, Blanton's, Colonel Taylor, Eagle Rare.
So what bottles here are owned by the same company?
All of these over here are all part of the Buffalo Trace collection.
Okay, so if I'm going to buy a bottle of Blanton, I feel like I'm getting something super exclusive, and maybe I am, maybe it's marketing, but it's owned by the same company.
It's a little bit of hype. It's a little bit of hype.
That's interesting.
It's a nice decanter. You know, once you've drank your Blantons, you keep it, and you can keep something really cool looking. And I don't know if a lot of people realize this. It's a hand grenade. And that's why it's named after General Blanton's, is it's supposed to look like a hand grenade in honor of the Army service that he did. And you can actually collect the horses on top, and they spell out, if you look really closely down here, there's a little letter. It spells out the word Blanton's, and so the point is for you to collect them all.
Okay, so maybe it is a collector. Maybe it is a real thing, collector.
Yeah,
right.
I've collected it a few times over.
All right, so before we get too long here, let's start here and go quickly through. So you were talking about brown and clear, so this is interesting, right?
Yeah, so this is White Dog is what it's called. This is the same thing as White Lightning. So if you're familiar with people who homebrew their own whiskey, this is exactly what it comes out of the distillate looking like before it's aged. And so all whiskey comes out clear.
So people say they don't like brown, but
it's
here.
You might say you don't like brown liquor and then you go drink wine. Guess what? Wine is aged in a barrel. Whiskey is aged in a barrel. It's not really all that different. It's grape versus a distilled liquor, but at the same point, that's where the color comes from, is the inside of that barrel.
All right, so what's this?
All right, so this is Rock Hill Farms. Super exclusive bottle, hard to get. It's fantastic if you can get it at the MSRP, which is supposed to be around 80 bucks. The reality is they're $200 or $300, but it's also part of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. Absolutely fantastic for the money. You can't go wrong with it. You've already talked about Blanton's.
Eagle Rare.
Yeah, Eagle Rare is actually my favorite. You'll probably see some pictures here in a few minutes, but I've got an Eagle Rare barrel. What I wanted to point out about this, and both these bottles over here as well, is there's the regular Eagle Rare that you can know and love. It's a $29 bottle. It's fantastic as a daily drinker. It's probably one of my top 3. I would buy it every time. But the store actually can go in and buy an entire barrel, and then you'll know because it's called a store pick. And so when you go into the store and they're advertising a store pick, that'll tell you that that owner has purchased the entire barrel, bottled it, and then they're selling only bottles. So that's kind of a cool story. When you go in and you're actually drinking it, you know that you're only drinking that bottle from that barrel, no one else will.
And Eagle's a bourbon.
Yeah. I pulled this out. This is an infinity barrel, and I think this is a pretty cool thing to think about.
What's an infinity barrel?
Yeah. If you are at the bottom ounce or 2 of your bottle, and if you want to finish it, by all means finish it. But another cool thing you can do is put a bunch of different types of bourbon into one bottle, keep filling it up forever, drink down, fill it up, drink down, and you essentially have your own unique bottle that no one else will ever have. So this has Blanton's, this has Pappy, this has George C. Stagg.
So this is Andrew's Infinity Barrel.
William Weller, yeah.
See, I told you guys, there is so much that, and again, people watching this are probably gonna say, yeah, I knew that, I don't, maybe I didn't, whatever. Yeah. I didn't know these things, so that's awesome. So go, move on to this one.
Last 2, Old Forester, it's awesome. Brown-Forman is literally a building right over here.
When you say over here, we're in Dunwoody.
Yeah, they're right across the street in the Ravinia building. So shout out to some good friends of mine who work over there. Love the Old Forester brand, can't go wrong with it. Fantastic store pick if you find it.
So pop question before you go there, what's the proof on that?
This is 90 proof.
90 proof, so it's more in the top range.
Probably closer to the bottom if you think about bourbon, right? Because 80 would be the bottom end, 130 would be the top end.
Told you, I don't know.
It's a great little sipper. You can't go wrong. It's good with or without ice.
Last
thing, Four Roses. Everybody loves Four Roses. It's fantastic. This is also a store pick. You can see right here on the side, there's a lot of detailed information on which of the Four Roses groups that this one is in. This is an OBSQ. There's actually 16 combinations. And then you also see that this one's barrel strength, which means this is higher proof. Like you were asking about earlier, this one's actually at 62% alcohol, so 114.
Gosh, unbelievable. So again, we could talk about bourbon and whiskey, or at least Andrew could, I couldn't, but this has been a fun conversation. I love knowing things and gaining knowledge. And again, to recap, I was having bourbon with Andrew a couple months ago, and the way he was communicating with the bartender, it invited me to say, what don't I know about it? And probably a lot of people that might watch this are gonna have the same question. Like, so again, could talk about this all day long, but we wanted to do is highlight Andrew's knowledge of bourbon. Thought it'd be fun, do a little bit different video, and really go from there. So I'm Jeremy Cady with Compass Realty.
Andrew Leffler with Compass Realty.
Both Compass agents, love selling real estate in Atlanta, but we also like drinking bourbon together. So hope everyone liked this. If you want any more information, we'll put Andrew's information below, and you can personally come to his house and drink bourbon with him.
Let's open some bottles.
Let's do it. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye.